There are no flat, affordable, and attractive plots available in Austin. Therefore, people look for sites with slopes to build their homes on. Our videos about building homes on slopes are racking up views and going viral lately. Today, I'll show you two new projects we're working on that are being built on slopes. They're both in the early stages of construction right now. We're getting ready to pour the basement, the first step to building any beautiful new house with a fantastic view. There are 3 stages to making every basement. The first stage is projecting. The second is lot marking and basement production, and the third is inspection. The basement needs to be approved before you can move on to the next step in home construction, which is a frame production. I'm going to start off today talking about the projecting stage. Watch out, there's fitting here. Here you can see that this site has a considerably large slope. It was planted with cedar, so we had to consider 2 important issues before buying these lots. The first consideration is previous coverage. In other words, we had to ask ourselves, how could we cover the lot with a house, or establish an ambush point for this house? The second one is whether there would be enough space for a septic field, and whether it would be possible to set a septic tank. Septic tanks are required in this area, but this is a significant challenge when you're building on a slope. So, before you select a lot, invite a septic engineer and an architect who can estimate the size and volume of a house, and tell you if it's going to be possible to set a septic system there. It's actually pretty common to have lots where it's impossible to set up a septic system. We call them undoable, because we cannot do anything on them. I mean, you can't have a house without a septic system, and there's no sense in buying a lot if you're not going to build on it. We had a case like this recently in our area. Guy bought a lot where a septic system could not be set because the space was limited and there were problems with the soil. I felt terrible when I heard about it. Imagine spending all that money and you can't do anything with what you bought. It's a serious problem in this area. Okay, I have something to show you now. This particular slope is pretty steep, above 30%. If you didn't already know, regulations dictate that you can't set up a septic system on a slope if its incline is more than 30%. To achieve a 30% slope, we had to flatten the lot, which meant time spent digging a site and fixing a retaining wall. Using a retaining wall was the only way we could get a septic field that is under all rules and codes. This produced more expenses though, and limited this size of the backyard for future inhabitants of this house. Still, flattening the site a bit allowed us to set up a septic field, which is the reason we were able to build our cool new project at all. Okay, we've talked septic and previous coverage. Alright, next step. In case of houses on a slope, you cannot use the large part of a lot because it's located on a slope, or below a cliff if you buy a lot on a cliff. For example, for a half an acre lot, you can only use 1/10 or 1/20th, so the estimation is run according to the ambush point area, plus the space for the septic field. If you have a sewage system, you'll solve a septic problem. If there is a sewerage system there, you will be able to build a bigger house because you will have more coverage opportunities as opposed to having space taken up by a septic system. For houses on a slope, you really have to pay attention to how much room can be taken up by a house, and how much should be reserved for the sewer system. There are a few architectural nuances to be aware of when you build a house on a slope. For example, you will most likely choose to build a cascade home where the first floor is lower than the second floor. Also, you will most likely have to have one wall without windows watching on the ground, because you will need that retaining wall. Now, I hope you're taking notes right now, because constructing a retaining wall will leave you with additional expenses, drainage, construction, and more technical issues. Still, it is the perfect opportunity to locate your house's windows on the opposite side of the slope, with beautiful views like in our case. If you turn on this side, you will see that all the windows are going to provide the homeowners with a positively stunning view of the hills. Almost makes me want to keep this project for myself. Remember though, the rooms on the opposite side will not have windows, hiding behind the retaining wall on lower floors. If you have an opportunity to build a 3-storied house, you will have windows all around. That's just the nature of this type of plan. We often don't plan room locations, and advantages and disadvantages when we buy a house on a slope. You lose an opportunity to set windows in part of the rooms when you cut off the slope to prep it for construction. When you finish projecting, you should pass to the marking and basement construction stage. Of course, it's best to invite a specialized company called a survey agency that will come and do something called an envelope. 4 house angles that must be within your basement. Now, I would not recommend marking without an envelope. These guys do accurate marking with the help of satellite pictures, and the naked eye simply can't compare. If you try doing it without an envelope, you can go beyond feedback lines or make other mistakes. And if something like that happens, you won't be able to get a permit when all's said and done. That's why we always opt to invite in a specialized company whose services cost about $1,000. It might seem high at first glance, but again, mistakes here can cost you that permit. They mark the points with satellite pictures, fix pegs to get an accurate view of a house's position and its height. They will give you an elevation with the point to start a house construction, which we call a 0 point. I cannot stress enough to you that this must be done by specialists. After all marks have been done, you should pass on to the grading stage, which is when you prepare ground for construction. At this stage, you get to face the problem we're dealing with currently. As you can see, there is a piece of soil that had to be grabbed when we flattened the slope out for our septic field. After the ground has been prepared, you will start working with forms and really get started with your basement form. We actually have something to tell you about forms, though, that's specific to building on slopes, which is our specialty. One angle can have a 6-inch edge or 8-inch edge as recommended. For example, Travis County recommends 8 inches above the ground level. At the same time, an opposite angle from a slope side can be up to 8, 10, or 12 feet depending on the slope. You need to discuss the height of the opposite side with your contractor when you work together to figure out dimensions. There will be a high concrete wall when it's done. So you should also think of what you will cover it with. You want the house to be attractive when the form is removed. Usually nobody pays attention to this in Texas, so you see a lot of basements where there are walls of plain concrete. We try to cover them to make our homes as visually appealing as possible. I'd advise you to think of this at the beginning. If you have a high basement on the wall, figure out what you're going to cover it with: stucco, aluminum, wood panel, or a thin level of plaster. Barabo. This is a very interesting word that has become a surprise for me. I learned it from a contractor. When you finish with marking and grading, you should fix these 4 constructions on each house's angle. What do you think? What are these constructions for? Please write your answers in the comments. Or should I tell you about it right now? And now I'm answering to everyone who already left comments. These 4 constructions on each angle are used to pull the thread to mark the level and size of a house. The workers will fix the house forms according to these threads. The forms go exactly along the threads if we set a vertical line. These threads are set and stay up until the final stage when a basement has been poured. They're taken off after that to have a strong basement for your house and pass the next stage. Still, there are a couple of nuances I want you to pay attention to. The constructors often forget to do a pass treatment when they build a basement, especially here in Austin, Texas. Pass treatment is insect control. It's very popular here since we have all kinds of buggers hanging around this area. The guys come with tablets and offer to do it every year. Now, I'm about to save you $9,000. I bet your ears just perked right up, huh? If you put the pass treatment under the basement and add a black film, this will work for 10 years. This means you don't need to do a pass year after year. Otherwise, you would have to do a pass treatment yearly and pay anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to keep insects out of your house. If you do a pass treatment before the basement construction, the service will guarantee you won't need to do it again for 10 years. It's a tiny detail that is often lost in the process, simply forgotten, but it can save you a lot of money. You're welcome! After the form is ready, you should invite a plumber and an electrician to fix pipes under the fittings, pass the inspection, and make grounding. All these things come first, and then you finally get to pour the concrete. Of course, fitting is another stage altogether, but we invite a specialized team to fix the fitting. You're probably wondering how long this takes, right? Well, for if we use this basement as an example, they're going to be working here for 1 to 2 days, and then the fitting will be done. After that, we'll move to the next stage: inspection. You may get in line to get concrete workers for 1 to 2 weeks and will pour concrete after that. Concrete pouring is also a mastery that requires many years of learning. When you choose a contractor, be picky. Visit the sites where your contractors have done work before. There's no better way to know how skilled a contractor is than to see their work firsthand. Buy a level for $30 and use it to check if the basement has been poured according to level. If your concrete contractor pours concrete not according to the level, you will have a big problem in the future. If they don't use a level for a basement, all walls, angles, and windows will mow. This is super important. The drywall and the furniture will also mow. The concrete basement must be made exactly according to the level. Only the best workers on this job. Why do so many contractors hate working on projects on a slope? Because a flat lot basement can be poured in one sitting. They make a form, fix a fitting, and then pour concrete and go to the next basement. We obviously take a lot longer for projects on a slope. For example, here you can see the first part of the basement and retaining wall. This retaining wall is part of the basement's second stage. The house's second level will run over there where there is a thread. So we're pouring the first part now. With the part of the wall, up to 30% of it can be poured. After that, we will join it with the second part and do some more pouring. The basement is so much more complex when you're working on a slope, which means it consumes more time and money to construct. It must be done in multiple stages. Remember this when you negotiate with your contractor. I have a case where a contractor came, did the first stage, and then disappeared. I don't know if he was scared or just didn't want to do the next stage or what. I also had a case once where we had to do the pouring in 3 increments instead of 2. Working on a slope takes extra time and money. It's complicated. That's my biggest takeaway from working on slopes. Again, the last stage is inspection. Pay close attention here. There will be 4 or 5 different inspections depending on the type of slope you're working on. The first is the engineering inspection that you need to pass when you finish the fittings. The engineer must come and check whether all fixing, joints, and forms are okay. The second is the plumbing inspection. During this one, the inspector checks all the pipes in the basement and makes sure they're in accordance with the codes and rules, located under fittings, and not going to be broken by the fitting. The water district inspector will come and check to give you a green sticker. The third is the electricity inspection. You must do the grounding, screw the wire to the fitting, and pass this to the inspector to get your house grounded. The fourth possible inspection is by a bank. If you get a loan, the bank should check how the form is done at your lot. To pass it, you should invite a survey expert who will picture the form to send to the bank. The bank will perform a final basement inspection after you have poured the basement. This inspection is not specific to sites where you're working on a slope. You should pass it at a flat lot as well. Still, I want to say that inspectors, engineers, and banks check slope way more carefully on projects like this one. The slope is a complicated project, and more care needs to be taken with the basement. I see another hill opposite our 2 houses on a slope project, and there are countless houses built over there. People love houses on slopes. You get different benefits from it: a beautiful view and a unique, lovely mood. Of course, you will face challenges. Still, all of them have solutions if you're willing to learn. I really hope you consider trying to build a house on a slope. I just know you'll rock it. Subscribe to my channel. You can find my contact information in the description. Come meet me at our building sites, where I'll be waiting to show you all of our construction projects, not just the ones built on a slope.